Welcome to the first episode of LUV, the Universe, and Being a Veterinarian. I'm Dr. Tanya Grantham. Today, I want to have a look at your professional persona, your personality, and your inner self or your inner being. And what are they? And how do they influence each other? It's my opinion that the veterinary profession is in trouble. The more I read, the more I expose myself to international groups of vets, the more I listen to our young graduates and even the veterinary students, the more I understand that, or we know that we are losing veterinarians. Why are so many veterinarians leaving the profession? We spend an enormous amount of time, energy, and money on gaining our degree. That's worldwide. And this problem is a worldwide problem. So when we enter into our workplace and we start practicing as a veterinarian, what is it that then drives us to forsake all that we have learned and forsake our calling? I believe veterinary science and practicing as a veterinarian is a calling, it's a vocation. You don't just decide to do it because of the prestige and because of all the money you're going to make. I'd like to explore a lot of the reasons why we're in trouble. One of those, I believe, is because our professional persona, or what we perceive we have to do professionally, the things that we are called on to do professionally, are in conflict with our inner being, or in conflict with our soul. And this can be true for any workspace. If you are being called on to perform tasks or to do things or to behave in a way that does not align with your soul, you will experience stress, and the stress will present eventually as dis-ease or disease. I wanted to start the series by looking at a professional persona and also what is our inner being and what is our personality. I understand them all to be different. I also understand that if we can bring our professional persona and our personality and our inner self into alignment, then we will be way more at ease and our lives will be much smoother with less conflict. So let me introduce you to some of these concepts. So I'll start by saying I'm a South African veterinary graduate. That means that I qualified at Onderstepoort. Currently, it is the only faculty in South Africa that offers a bachelor's degree in veterinary science. It's with most institutions, there is a specific characteristic or character around faculty. And Onderstepoort is no different. So my question to you is, how much of what you present to the world as a veterinarian is based on what you learned at Onderstepoort? And I'm not referring to the academic content. I'm referring to the character of that institution. There are many things that we learn, and there are many ways in which we are called upon to conform in society. And when you are one of 100 or 150 or 200 people within a class, or one of perhaps 1,000 that are studying the veterinary science degree simultaneously and find themselves on the campus, my question is, how much of your behavior did you learn from being within that group? I believe that the students impose a certain behavior on each other. We're very aware of peer pressure and peer groups and our need to fit in to a group that conforms with what is required for you to be okay at Onderstepoort. So it follows then that when you leave Onderstepoort and you step into your first position as a veterinarian, how much of that behavior that you learned do you take with you into your job? The flip side of that question is how much of yourself, how much of your inner self do you express in your workplace? So the inner self, as I understand it, is my soul. It's something that I alluded to in the introduction. My soul had a calling to become a veterinarian. My personality is the physical manifestation of all of the things that I have learned during my walk on earth at this time. So, for example, yes, there is an inherent set of values and an inherent character that I carry, but it is also shaped by my environment. When I was younger, I was very young, I was 7 years old, I was sent to boarding school. And at boarding school, I was bullied. What that did to my personality, it changed my personality. It made me a child that desperately wanted to fit in. And in order to fit in, I denied a lot of my characteristics and a lot of my skills. And as I have matured and got to this ripe old age where I now am, and hopefully there'll be still many more years because I'm only just starting to have fun on this planet now. I discovered that by suppressing those aspects of my character, I created a lot of conflict and a lot of unhappiness and a lot of pain. So to bring that back to the question that I started with, how much of your inner being is being expressed in your workplace or as a veterinarian? And if you're listening to this and you're not a vet, you hopefully do have a job somewhere else. And my question is the same. How much of yourself are you able to express in your workplace? Let's explore this a little further, and hopefully I can give you a little bit more insight into what I'm really trying to express. When I graduated, 6 months after I graduated, I walked into my second position. And so all of my positions have been in small animal practice. And I was very fortunate when I accepted that job. I stayed there for nearly 14 years. It was a place in which I felt at home. I was able to, for the most part, be myself, and we'll delve into that a little bit more as I move through today's discussion. I had an incredibly fantastic mentor. He recently passed away, Dr. Jesse Coleman. He spent a lot of time teaching me a lot of practical skills. He was an incredible surgeon. He also spent a lot of time teaching me business skills and what it takes to manage and run a business and work with people, a team within a practice. What he didn't teach me was how to interact with the clients. And I ended up having to learn that by virtue of trial and error. Fortunately, Dr. Coleman had every confidence in me, and I was able to respond to clients within my own personal parameters. And that was really good. There were times, however, where a client asked me to do something which made me feel very uncomfortable, because I was in a position where my partner or my boss trusted me. I didn't I didn't question my decisions. And if I did make mistakes, there was a forum, there was a way in which I could discuss that with Dr. Coleman. But it gave me confidence to be able to make decisions that were aligned with my inner being and aligned with my personality even at the time. So let me give you an example of how fortunate I was. It was a Saturday evening, and a gentleman walked into the reception area with a Rottweiler that had been involved in a dog fight. The Rottweiler had a fairly large wound over one of its shoulders. I proceeded to explain to the client that I would need to admit his dog, administer anesthetic, clean the wound, close it up as best I could, and then the dog could go home. The dog would only go home the following day. The gentleman looked at me and said, "That's not going to happen. I'm not leaving my dog here, and you're not giving it an anesthetic. And I'll hold the dog while you stitch the dog." Had I been in a different practice, I might have felt that I needed to please the client, despite the fact that it would have put any vet under grave danger. I didn't feel that way at all. And because of my situation, and I'd probably only been qualified for a year, maybe a little over a year, because of where I found myself and because of the backup that I had, I basically looked the client in the eye. This is my professional persona. So without being unsympathetic and without being unreasonable, I simply looked at him and said, "I'm not prepared to treat your dog without giving it an anesthetic." Perhaps the Rottweiler example is a little too clear in that, would any senior veterinarian expect you to stitch up a fully grown Rottweiler that is being held by its owner? I would hope to say that most people would not expect that of you. Most vets would not expect that of you. So let's look at something else that's perhaps a little bit more subtle. You move into a practice. My partner had owned his practice for 25 years. There is an unwritten code within that practice. And for some young veterinarians, they move into a practice and there are a number of senior vets. And there is a way in which that practice functions. As the new graduates, you are expected to fit into that code. What if that code doesn't gel with your own set of values or your inner being? Many times in my early years, I was guided by the practice protocols. And I think that that's very important when we're learning. However, as I gained experience and I formulated my own ideas, and I graduated 25 years after my mentor, things changed. Things changed in the veterinary field. And I know, having graduated nearly 30 years ago, how much has changed in the veterinary field. So what if, so the unwritten code or the unwritten law is, well, the senior vets have always done it this way, and you need to toe the line and you need to do it that way. So if the senior vets are always putting antibiotics into the abdomen, intra-abdominally after a spay, then it's expected that you should do the same. What do you do when there is that sort of conflict? Are you in a position to discuss your misgivings and your more up-to-date knowledge with your senior vets, or do you just have to toe the line? If you simply have to toe the line, what does that do to you inside? And what impact does that have on you later, or even in your dealings with the clients? So let's explore what happens if you are unable to perform the updated procedure that you were taught. What happens if your ethics are compromised and you are unable to speak to your supervisor, your boss, your employer, even your partner? What does that do to you? I'll tell you what it did to me, because as much as I say I was very fortunate, and I also come with a lot of stories, and I've come with a lot of excuses and a lot of reasons for doing things and not doing things, as we all do. And in the early years of my veterinary career, I told myself a lot of stories. I told myself that I had this job and I was a partner and I was responsible and I had to be there and I had to, work these ridiculous hours and I had to see all these patients and I had to be nice and kind to the clients, which is how we want to be. We want to be able to listen to them. We want to be able to hear their concerns, and we want to be able to deal kindly and compassionately with them and with the patient, and have a result which serves actually all of us, which serves the patient, the client, and us as veterinarians. But what happens if you are unable to express what you need to express? So my stories were all about, I had to work these hours and I had to be there, and it was now my practice, or at least 50% of it anyway, and I placed myself under a great deal of pressure. I placed myself under a great deal of pressure. The end result was that I didn't speak up. I didn't say to my partner that I was struggling with the hours and that I felt that I was becoming less effective or that I needed leave. And the end result was that I started behaving very badly. I started becoming very rude to the clients, and in a sense, I felt like the quality of my work had deteriorated because I had too much on my plate and I wasn't allowing myself adequate time to rest and recuperate and regenerate. Fortunately, the rudeness didn't result in any sort of unhappiness going to veterinary counsel, but it did result in the client expressing their unhappiness to my partner. And my partner and I were able to have a discussion, and I was then able to apologize and move forward. And it was a big wake-up call for me. So be aware of stress and be aware of the insidious nature of the stories and the patterns that you also have within yourself. So to return to, how do we present ourselves professionally, and what about our personality, And how does that tie in with our inner self? Ultimately, this life and our job and our relationships are all about seeking peace and ease and harmony. When our professional persona is not in alignment with our inner self, we are unhappy, stressed. I can become aggressive. And that doesn't create for a good anything. So all I'd like to do is ask you, or ask yourself, where am I not in alignment? Where is there a bit of stickiness? Am I excessively stressed? And have a look at what are the possible options available to you to bring yourself into alignment. I do intend to examine these questions and these situations way more in the next number of episodes going forward. So to conclude this episode, come back to your professional persona. What is it that you project? How is it that you behave in your professional capacity? And is that in alignment with your inner self and your set of values? Are these areas in your life in alignment? How much of your behavior, how much of the way in which you express yourself is personality and something that perhaps you have learned, and how much of it is conditioning, another thing that you've learned, maybe from your faculty, from your school, from your family. If they're in alignment and you are at peace. If they aren't in alignment, I would urge you to, first of all, admit and become aware that you are out of alignment. And secondly, start to delve into the reasons for the misalignment and the unease. And thirdly, start to investigate what options do you have available to you to bring yourself into alignment and into peace. Thank you for spending this time with me. Please pass your comments or post your comments on the Facebook page, Life, the Universe, and Being a Veterinarian. You can also go a little bit more in depth in the private Facebook group, Life, the Universe, and Everything. If you haven't yet joined, please request to join on the Facebook page or pop me a private message. And I'm very happy to send you an invitation. And let's talk. Let's talk about these things. Until next time, so much love to you.